One of the most common questions that I get asked is, what gear specific to clothing do you need for a good layering system for hunting elk? And I think it's important to step back and talk about layering, talk about what gear systems are going to work specific to elk hunting. And the main concept to layering is it allows you to have multiple pieces of gear that you're wearing that you're able to either put on or take off depending on your needs for that specific moment when you're elk hunting. And elk hunting is very dynamic. You have a lot of ranges of temperature, a lot of different variations of weather, as well as a lot of different hunting styles, even within one morning hunt for elk. So when you think about the layering system for elk hunting, there's really two primary systems that I use. I have one for my early season hunting, and then another system that's very similar but slightly different for my mid-season or late season hunting. Before I jump in and talk about the specific gear and the specific pieces that I use, I want to talk about how layering helps us for elk hunting. And when you think about a typical day of elk hunting, you're starting out early in the morning, usually before daylight. Temperatures are typically cold. And even in September, on into October, and especially into November, we can get some pretty cool mornings, down into the 30s and 40s for temperatures. During September, typically your weather is going to be fairly consistent, fairly mild weather, occasional thunderstorm, rain here and there, but you usually don't have to worry too much about prolonged snow or a week-long elk hunting trip where it's raining the whole time. So we'll neglect the effects of weather as we talk about early season, but definitely consider that as we get into more of the mid-season and late season hunting. So for early season, we've got a cool morning. We take off hiking. So we're hiking, we're active, we're building up a sweat even in these cooler temperatures. Then we get to a certain point where maybe we're stopping to glass, or we get a bull to bugle and we stop and we set up. So we go from active hiking to stopping. Temperatures could still be cool. So now we have to make sure we're maintaining some of that body heat and that warmth. Then as we get up and hike again throughout the middle of the day, it's hot. The sun's bearing down on us. We set up for the afternoon and a thunderstorm comes in. We've got to be prepared for that. And then again in the evening, we might get lucky. We might be successful and kill an elk just before dark. And now we're there after dark, well into the night. So we need to be prepared for that as well. So what layering does is it allows us to micro-regulate our core body temperature throughout a whole bunch of different variations of temperature and weather throughout the day. And I want to start with the base layer because the base layer is what's against your skin. And that's really the most important piece. And you want something that's going to take the moisture, the perspiration, and move it away from your body. If that perspiration stays against your body and you stop and the temperatures are cool, you'll get cold much faster. So you want to move that moisture away from your body. That's why cotton's not a good choice for hunting clothing. It doesn't do anything to get rid of moisture. It holds it there against your body. You're going to get cold. And especially if you're out overnight or if you're packing late into the night or if a storm moves in, that moisture against your body is bad. So a good base layer that sits against your body is going to evaporate or wick that moisture away from your body and then allow it to be evaporated once it's on the outside of your system. The next piece is your insulation layer. And that's what's really going to keep you warm. Your base layer is not necessarily an insulation layer, so you want a mid layer that's going to keep you warm. You're able to take that mid layer off or add it back on as it's needed. And then you've got your outer layer, and an outer layer is just like it sounds. It's what's on the outside. It needs to be able to handle those thunderstorms in the afternoon. It needs to be able to handle wind if you're hunting in windy conditions. It's protecting you from the elements from the outside. So for me, for elk hunting, again, keeping in mind that I'm very active as I'm elk hunting, I'm starting out early, I need to stay warm in the morning, then as I hike and build up a sweat, I need to be able to take off some of those layers, be able to maintain that, move that moisture to the outside and away from my body. Then if I stop, I need to put on a layer to keep some insulation there, hold that body heat, and then also be prepared for the elements. So to start with, that base layer, I just wear the Core Crew. It's the lightweight and it's long sleeve. So just a simple synthetic base layer. And we can probably spend a whole video talking about synthetic versus merino. I prefer synthetic. And the reason why is a synthetic base layer is going to do a much more efficient job of wicking moisture away from your skin. Merino will do a decent job, but merino's benefits are that it's going to keep you warm even when it's wet. and it's also not going to stink. Synthetics have come a long way, and I'm not worried at all about odor with this synthetic layer. If it does start stinking after 2 or 3 days, I simply go to a creek, I put it in the creek, I rinse it out, wring it out a couple times, hang it on a limb to dry, and 20 minutes later it's dry and ready to go. So I'm not worried near as much about odor, and the performance, especially in the early season of the synthetic base layer, is why I choose synthetic. So this is probably the most critical piece. This is the foundation. It goes against your skin, the Core Crew lightweight long sleeve synthetic base layer shirt. From there we get into insulation, and again, insulation is something that's going to be very dynamic. You're going to take it off and put it back on probably multiple times a day. So you want something lightweight that you can easily store in your pack and then pull it out to quickly put on if you need it. My number one piece for insulation is the Kelvin Light vest. And the nice thing about a vest is it covers all of your core body areas. You don't have bulk out on your arms, so for drawing a bow, for hiking, you don't have a big bulky sleeve that you have to worry about. It covers your body, all of the main areas, the mass areas where you're going to be most likely to lose heat, and it's going to keep you insulated on those core body areas. So I prefer a vest for insulation. This one is super warm. It's a fairly thick puffy, but it'll fold up and roll up into nearly nothing that you can slide anywhere in your backpack. I wear it first thing in the morning when we're taking off hiking, usually about 30 or 40 minutes into the hike. I'm stopping, I'm peeling it off, I'm stuffing it in my backpack. But then it's nice to have middle of the day when you're in that cool timber, taking a nap for an hour or so, waiting for a bedded bull to bugle, pull it back on and it keeps you warm. Another option for an insulation piece aside from the vest is actually what I'm wearing here, and it's the Apex hoodie. And the Apex hoodie is a little bit lighter weight than a vest, so early season when I don't need a vest, I might opt for this as that base layer, insulation layer. It can be worn just as a base layer. It's a blend of synthetic and merino, so in the areas where you're likely to stink more, it's got merino. In the areas where you can benefit from the benefits of synthetic, it's got synthetic. So it's a blend, it's made of both materials. The hood is merino, the back is synthetic, it's got merino in other areas, so really a good piece for insulation. You could wear it as a base layer, but I would prefer this as an insulation piece. A little bit lighter weight, it's not going to keep you as warm as the puffy vest, but also a good option earlier in the season that you could probably leave on most of the day and not overheat. From the insulation, the next piece we'll talk about is the outer layer. And again, when we're talking early season elk hunting, the month of September, I really don't plan for a lot of bad weather. It's more the temperature swings that are pretty drastic, taking you from maybe 40 degrees up to 80 degrees. But for me, the outer layer that I like for early season is the Kelvin Active jacket. And it's almost like a mix between a synthetic and a puffy. That's a terrible job of describing it, but it's just a really comfortable jacket. It's not too light, it's not too heavy. It rolls up really small, so I can stuff it in my pack if I don't need it. But I find myself wearing this a lot throughout the day. Even when it gets warmer, it breathes so incredibly well that a lot of times I just leave it on. And the nice thing about the Kelvin Active is it's really quiet. It's a soft outer, it's super quiet, and that's my choice for the outer layer for early season. And we'll talk about mid-season and late season because this isn't going to be the outer layer choice for those hunts. The thing about this, if it gets wet, this is going to get wet. There's no treating, no DWR, there's nothing on it that's going to keep you dry. So if I am using this and relying on this, I definitely need an outer shell, a rain shell. And so I'll pack just a lightweight rain shell. This is my jacket. It's not rolled up really tightly. It'll roll up even smaller. That's pretty much in my pack all the time. And so if I need a rain shell to protect me from an afternoon rainstorm or a morning drizzle or something, I can pull this out and put it on. The other thing about this is if we stop in glass, it's going to be windproof, so I can pull it on, block the wind if it's windy. So that's my outer layer protection from rain that's pretty much always in my pack. And then the Kelvin Active jacket is my outer layer that I usually wear. Adds a little bit of insulation. It's just a great go-to jacket. Rounding out the clothing for early season, we come to pants, and there's a lot of options for pants, and it can be confusing to get the right one. It really comes down to your hunting style and your preferences on features. For me, there's two primary pants that I wear during archery season in September. The first is the Apex pant, and the Apex pant is a super lightweight, super comfortable. This is like wearing a pair of pajamas for elk hunting. And the problem with it is if you're in any kind of wet grass or anything, it's going to pick up that moisture, and it's not going to be as effective at shedding that moisture. It will dry incredibly quickly, similar to like the Ascent pant, but it's so much more comfortable, and the real beauty of these pants is they are quiet. These are probably the most silent pant that Sitka makes, and that's why if it's dry and temperatures are fairly warm, this is my go-to pant. If it's starting to get a little bit cooler and if there's going to be moisture, I switch and go to the mountain pant. And the mountain pant does a great job of shedding moisture. So if you're walking through wet grass, this is going to keep you dry a lot longer. When it does get wet, it's going to take a little bit longer to dry, but with a pair of gaiters with either of these pants, if you're walking through wet grass, you're probably going to be fine. If I'm hunting Oregon on the coastal range, I'm going to be walking through something that's wet pretty much all day, every day, so I'll wear the mountain pants. They're a little heavier, which makes them a little warmer, so if you're hunting in 80-degree or warmer weather, they might be a little too warm for that. And the other thing about this, they're a tighter weave, which helps with the shedding of the moisture, but it also makes them a little bit noisier. Not an issue. I've never worried about noise when I'm hunting elk, but if you pick them up and compare them to the Apex pant, you're going to notice this mountain pant is a little bit noisier. Again, as you're walking, it's a slim athletic fit, so it's not like your pant legs are brushing against each other and making a lot of noise, but just something to keep in mind as a feature. The Apex pant is going to be quieter than the mountain pant. Now, new for 2019 are the Traverse pants, which I'm wearing here. And they're almost a perfect blend between the Apex and the mountain pant. A little tighter weave, they're probably going to be a lot better in moisture and keeping your dry in, like water on grass, things like that, water on brush, than what the Apex pant is, but they're going to be quieter than the mountain pant. So I'm super excited to wear these throughout this elk season as a good complement between the Apex and the mountain pant. One other pant that I'll mention is probably more of a later season pant, but I'll talk about it now, is the Timberline pant. And the Timberline pant is really similar to the mountain pant. It's a heavier pant, but the benefit of it is it has waterproof knees and a waterproof seat. So during that later season, when you're probably doing more glassing, you're gonna be able to sit down and not get your rear end wet. Or if you're doing spot and stock, it's got knee pads in it that are removable, but also the knees are waterproof. So if you are on wet ground, you can crawl across it on your knees and keep your knees dry. So with any of these pants, I prefer to wear a nice gaiter that's going to do a good job of keeping water out of my boots. And the problem with walking through wet grass isn't that water is getting inside your boots through the boots. It's getting your pant legs wet, which is getting your sock wet, which is getting down to the inside of your boot, now the inside of your boot's wet. So a good pair of gaiters that come up over the calf is going to shed most of that moisture and keep your boots dry all day. For me, there's two choices for the full height gaiter. The first is the Stormfront, which I have here. They're a little noisier, but I've never had a problem with wearing these even during archery season for elk. They come up over your calf. The system for attaching to your boot is super slick and quick, and they're 100% waterproof. They've got Gore-Tex in them, so they're going to keep you really dry. The other option is the Thunderhead gaiter, and the Thunderhead gaiter is very similar to the Stormfront, but the Thunderhead has a brushed face, so it's going to be quieter. The problem with that is, with a brushed face, you start picking up burrs and other things, so I prefer these. They're a little bit tighter fitting. There's also the Ascent gaiter, which is the small one, which for me, it's more of a run and gun, August, early September type of a gaiter to keep brush and debris out of your boots, but it's not going to do much to keep you dry because it's only coming up a little ways on your pant leg there. So I like the full length gaiter. My choice is the Stormfront. I also have the Thunderhead, so if burrs and things aren't an issue, I'm not worried about picking them up. I might put those on if I need a super quiet set of gaiters. Lastly, just rounding out the accessories, are gloves. And I've got 3 different gloves here. I keep all of them with me. The first one I'll talk about is the Traverse glove. This is more of almost a fleece interior. It's a warm glove. If you're a really cool morning that you're going out elk hunting on, it's nice to have that just to be able to hold onto your bow and keep your hands warm. It's a little thicker. Absolutely, you can shoot with it on, but it's probably not going to be my first choice if I don't need extra warmth. My first choice is probably going to be the shooter glove. And the shooter glove is a lot thinner glove, still adds a little bit of insulation to your hands, keeps you warm on those cool mornings. I wouldn't say on a cold morning, but what it does, it fits super nice. Gives you a lot of dexterity with your fingers. Absolutely can shoot with this one on. The other thing you'll notice is it's short down here on your wrist, so you can shoot with, or you can wear it with a release, and that release isn't going to have to worry about the glove bunching up in front of it or getting underneath of it. The other glove, which is new this year, is the Ascent glove. Very similar to the shooter glove, even thinner though. And this one is going to be basically just giving you coverage over your hand. Not a lot of warmth in the Ascent glove, but definitely very tight, very form-fitting, and a lot of dexterity there in the fingers. I think for me, if I had to pick one for early season archery, it would probably be the shooter glove or the Ascent glove, just where I don't need that extra insulation. My fingers tend to get a little bit colder though, so I do carry the Traverse gloves, and if there's any question about keeping my hands warm, I'm going for the Traverse glove. So the last thing I'll talk about is more of a mid-season and late season system. And the only real difference you have to consider is you're probably going to experience some more weather and a little bit cooler temperatures. And I'm talking mid-October into mid to late November. If you get even later than that, you're going to need to be concerned about some heavier snowfall, maybe spending all day in the cold, and maybe regulating more of that body temperature by using insulation, keeping your body temperature and your body heat inside where you're going to need it. And when it comes to that later season, mid-season to late season, I'm probably not going to use the Kelvin Active jacket as much for my outer layer. I'm going to switch and either use the Jetstream jacket or the Traverse cold weather hoodie. Both of these are treated. This one's probably going to keep you a little bit drier in a rainy condition, but again, it's not waterproof. This is treated with DWR, so it's going to shed some of that, but if you're in an all-day downpour, you're going to absorb some moisture and you're going to end up getting moisture on the inside, which is what you don't want. So again, that rain shell is so important. This is the Cloudburst rain jacket, and it's 100% waterproof. It's lightweight, not a lot of frills to it, but it's always in my pack, and so I want something lightweight and compact. Later season, that outer shell, I would probably say if I'm going to be experiencing any light drizzles or rain, probably going to go with the Jetstream. And the Jetstream has a hood, which is nice in that later season. It's also got pretty good body mapping insulation in the key areas where you want it. It does have wind stopper in it, so in windy conditions it's going to stop the wind, and the exterior is treated with DWR. So you're going to get some water repellency, not waterproof, but water repellency from that layer. The other thing that's going to do, it's going to allow you to open up the pits with the pit zip and dump heat. So if you are hiking and it's hot, it's going to breathe good, but you can also open up and really release some heat. Then when you stop, you zip it down, hold that body heat in there, and it keeps you warm when you're sitting and glassing. If you tend to get cold, the Traverse cold weather hoodie is a great option. It's a thicker, higher loft insulation on the inside, so it's going to provide more warmth. It's not going to stop the wind though. So if you're in a windy condition, that wind's going to cut right through this, whereas the Jetstream is going to provide you with wind stopper. But if you're hunting in just cold temperatures, you aren't getting in a lot of rain, it's not overly windy, it's just cold, this is going to be a better option for you. And I'll actually wear this sometimes in late September, just with a base layer shirt and this, so I get rid of the vest and I get rid of the outer layer, and sometimes I'll hunt in this all day in late September. Not a primary piece for an early season system though. So later in the season, I'm probably going to shift more to the mountain pant and the timberline pant. Again, if I'm sitting and glassing a lot, I'm probably going to wear the timberline pant. I don't prefer knee pads, so whichever pant that I get, I'm taking the knee pads out. The timberline pant, the mountain pant, the apex pant, they all come with built-in knee pads that are all removable. And then the other thing to keep in mind is if it's cold and you need extra insulation on your base layer, there is a base layer bottom that you can wear underneath the pants. It's not going to slow you up or bind you down. It's a thinner layer, just to add a little bit of an element of insulation there. Again, gloves are a personal preference. Sitka makes a whole range of gloves. The Traverse glove for me works in most conditions as long as it's not getting wet, because these aren't waterproof, but they are warm even into an October and November type of a hunt. If you're sitting, glassing, riding horses, riding an ATV, you're going to probably want something a little bit thicker than these gloves. And the other thing I didn't mention is for both scenarios, early season or mid to late season, I'm always carrying a beanie. And I'll just put the beanie in my backpack, because if I sit down, your head is where you lose most of your body heat. So I'm putting on that beanie. It'll retain that if I can keep my head warm. It usually helps keep the rest of my body warm. So again, to recap, I think the most important thing to understand is how layers work and how layers work specific to elk hunting. Elk hunting, you're on the move a lot when it's cool, you're on the move a lot when it's warm. So you've got to regulate that moisture that you're creating from perspiration. You want to move it to the outside of your system so it can evaporate and leave your system completely. If that moisture is staying right next to your body, you're going to get cold. You're going to be swinging through cold and hot, and you're going to have trouble regulating your core body temperature and staying comfortable. A good system like the one I use from Sitka allows me to stay comfortable throughout multiple climates, microclimates, weather systems, and styles of hunting, which enables me to stay out longer and hunt harder. If you have questions or want to build your perfect system for elk hunting, head over to sitkagear.com and you can go through their system builder and find the exact pieces that might work best for you in multiple different scenarios and hunting styles. You can also send us an email at info@elk101.com or leave a comment right down here on YouTube under this video, and we'll do our best to answer those questions for you.